Under the Scope.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Under the Scope. I'm Jared. With me is sometimes co-host Carrie. She's on her phone. She's not really participating. We just got out of a movie screening. What a shocker. We're doing this in the car and we get out of a movie screening. It's like we've never done it before. We saw the second part in what is now being called the Divergent Series, Insurgent. Right, Carrie?
Yes.
Right.
First people in the nation to see it.
Apparently, according to our host, we are the first in the nation, although I suspect there are other people in the nation who are also seeing it first. Anyway, this is part 2 in a trilogy of books. The first one being Divergent, the second one being Insurgent, third one being Allegiant, I believe. All sort of take place in a dystopian future Chicago. This time I actually noticed some of the landmarks. Like the first one I wasn't really, it just looked like a mishmash of destroyed cityscape. But this one I noticed like, oh, they're actually like in the river and that's Navy Pier and they must be going out into Lake Michigan. Okay. Makes sense to me. Anyway, dystopian future. If you're not familiar with the first one, there is a sort of a experimental society that was created where people were divided into 5 different factions based on their personalities and their whatever, who they are as people. But there are a certain number of people who are qualified for multiple factions, I think is the deciding factor. And they're considered divergent. And as we start our part 2 in our tale, we pick up where our main divergent character, Triss, played by Shailene Woodley, her boyfriend, Four, her brother, Caleb, played by Ansel Elgort. I've already forgotten who played Four. Theo something, I think is his name.
I don't know.
And then another member of the faction that the bulk of them sort of broke away from at the end of the first film, Dauntless. Peter, played by Miles Teller. I think his name was Peter.
I think so.
For whatever reason, Shailene Woodley only acts with Ansel Elgort and Miles Teller now. So, whatever. They're the new Brad Pack, maybe.
There you go.
So after the events of the first film, where the Abnegation, I always get that name wrong.
It's a hard one.
Faction has basically been wiped out by Janine, who's played by Kate Winslet. She's the leader of Erudite. She's sort of taken over. In the fracas, our young band of heroes breaks away and goes off into hiding. They're hiding out with a group of Amity people out in the woods,
like
some sort of hippie farming community. They've got a dome that looks like a beehive. Pretty crazy. But they're struggling to fit in. They know they can't stay there for too long, and wouldn't you know it, it's not very long before shock troops from Erudite sent by Janine are on the hunt. They're looking for divergent people because apparently in the rubble of the Abnegation slaughter, they found a box, some crazy hexagonal box or pentagonal box, I don't know. A box that's got circuitry and apparently can only be opened by someone who's divergent who can pass all of the simulations, because they like to put people in sims in this world.
Yes.
For whatever reason. It's a thing. Anyway, that's pretty much the story. Basically, so they're attacked, and our young band of heroes needs to bust out. They need to head back, and they end up hopping a train, and they're heading back to the city. Along the way, they meet up with a gang of factionless people. Turns out that something might be important. Somebody might be important. I don't know. Our story starts to unfold from there. So
That's right.
That's basically it. If you've read the book, you know what's coming. If you haven't, then you're in for a movie. I will qualify it as a film. Any initial comments on this film, this Insurgent film?
Me?
Yes.
Why don't you start?
I've been talking a lot. I'm trying to break it up here.
It looks really cool in 3D on the IMAX.
See, I'm over 3D. I don't think
I don't like 3D very much. I thought this was decent.
It was fine, but I don't think it did anything. Like, I don't think the story needed it.
I think it looked better as an IMAX 3D, like the two things together.
Okay, so I mean, it was a really big screen.
Yes.
And I think the IMAX 3D does work better than the real 3D.
Yeah,
so
it looks better than other 3D, which I don't care about.
So, you've read some of the first book?
Yes.
and that's it.
That's it.
All right. I was promised that you would be a book expert. I was promised that you'd be there to fill in
Who said that?
gaps.
I told
my
Shane
sources.
that I was only like 2/3.
My sources told me that you would come through with vital information. Now you've let me know.
I know.
I've not read any of the books. And based on this second film, I don't think I'm going to, honestly. The first film I found to be okay. I thought it really kind of fell apart in the world building. Like, it didn't feel... If you put this series up against the Hunger Games series, it's night and day.
It is.
The Hunger Games world feels complete and three-dimensional, and it feels like the backstory was fleshed out, and it's driving... Excuse me, I'm choking on my dry throat. It's driving our characters' actions forward. This world just feels like some sort of flight of fancy that somebody came up with, and it doesn't... the factions never made logical sense to me. Why people just sort of put up with being classified a certain way never made sense to me, other than I guess that's how they were told they were supposed to be. And I just think that the actual production design in the first film just felt a little bit like they didn't spend enough. It didn't feel realized enough.
Yeah.
I think that they've probably updated the production value in the second one a little bit more, but it still doesn't feel realized to me. I don't know. It just feels like a world that's sort of created to tell a specific story, and they kind of can come up with whatever nifty doodads and gadgets and situations that they need to propel forward the narrative without it necessarily making complete logical sense to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that doesn't make sense.
I think it's interesting how they've got this, not interesting, but it's maybe weird that they've got this crumbling Chicago. I mean, the buildings are crumbling and the people are living in rubble, but they've still got high-techness, and they've built this society, and they can have these really, really vivid simulations. They've got all this other high-tech stuff.
They can't build a building.
But they can't build a new building or take down a building, or I don't know. They say it's been 200 years. It's like, I don't know. It's a weird juxtaposition that just doesn't work for me. Okay. Any comments on that?
I agree with all of that, but that being said, I liked this one way better than the first one. I thought it looked cooler.
I don't know about way better. I would say it's a little bit better.
It kept my interest way more than the first one.
Okay.
Although during the first one, to be fair, I was drinking bourbon. So I don't know if that made it. I was tired.
There was no bourbon to be had in this one.
There was a $7 beer, but I didn't have one. But I just enjoyed it more. I kept my interest more.
What did you think of the story, though?
It doesn't make a lot of sense, really.
For me, this is the word I kept thinking of as I was watching the film. It felt very procedural.
Yeah.
It felt like there weren't any twists and turns. There weren't any like interesting reveals, except for maybe one towards the end.
Then, are you talking about Peter?
Yes.
And that didn't make any sense. Like,
it sort of didn't. You just had to go like, okay.
Yeah.
It just felt like to me.
Explain it.
I think everything kind of happened on cue. I think characters kind of did exactly what you expected them to do.
Yeah.
I mean, when Triss decides to walk off and give herself up to Janine, I knew that was coming 10 minutes before it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so obvious that's where it was going to go.
Yeah, it's pretty predictable on what each person is going to do. Like, this is going to happen now.
I give the movie and the story points for having a lot of women in leadership roles.
Yeah.
Hey, they're not all good.
Not always nice.
Some are bad. Yeah. But the fact that there are a lot of female strong characters in the film is great. But I just think the story itself is just kind of really pedestrian.
Yeah.
And predictable. And consequently, there isn't a lot for the actors to really do with their characters. I mean, they are sort of who they are.
Which makes sense to me. Like, I think that at least Shailene and Miles, they all seem like they were good actors in other movies I've seen.
Yeah, no,
they didn't
great.
seem very good here.
There's a lot of people who are great. Yeah, Ansel Elgort. I mean, we saw him in The Fault in Our Stars. Very good in that.
If you saw this movie before any of those, you'd probably think they're not the greatest actors on earth, just because I think it's the material.
This just isn't a lot for them to work with, honestly. The Shailene, obviously, Triss gets the most because there's a certain duality to her character. You know, she's just got this fierceness and this no fear on one hand when she's sort of embracing her dauntless side, but then she's also got this vulnerable. She admits at some point that she's scared all the time.
Yes.
And she doesn't think that people like her, and she's very insecure on one side. So
she has aspects of all of the factions.
Exactly. There you go. So when they let that stuff come through, it's much more interesting. But more often than not, the characters are just exchanging dialogue that's there purely for the purpose of pushing the plot forward. And I found that boring, honestly.
Yeah.
I wasn't like completely bored to the point where I'm like, oh, get me out of here, but I was just, it didn't engage me as much as I hoped, so.
I can see that.
Effects-wise, I think we're good.
I thought it looked cool.
I mean, there's a lot of craziness going on with the simulations. It's all, virtual world stuff, so there's a lot of things crumbling. I mean, graphic artists or computer artists have figured out how to make buildings fall apart.
Yes. And fly. I thought that part looked cool.
Yeah.
As well as the train. I thought looked cool.
The train is good. I thought it was interesting. The train was using 2 tracks.
Yeah. It was like a double train.
That was an interesting touch, so.
That was kind of cool. My brother, the Trainiac, would love it.
Trainiac, I love it. All right, well, we've talked a lot about this film. Do you have any other comments you'd like to get up before we give this thing a score?
I think I probably won't read the books, but I will probably see the third movie just to see.
That's probably a fair comment.
I know my child wants to see this movie, but...
Yeah. Well, you might have to take it to her, or just wait till it come on HBO.
I think we can wait because we watched the last one on HBO. So.
All right. Well, we've waited long enough. Let's give this thing a score.
The Scope score is 2.5 stars.
So 2.5 stars, folks. Still, we're trying to. We're above 2, so it's a good upward trend. The last few movies we've seen have been garbage.
Yeah, usually.
So we're on an upward trend. Hey, we've got a few weeks left of March. April is almost here, and then May, and hopefully we will see something that is 3 stars. I'm looking for 3 stars. So, Carrie,
aim for the 4-star. For God's sake.
Thanks for joining me. Why don't you tell the folks what they can do, how they can get in touch with us?
I don't like that.
I played Shade's role. I figured you could play my role too.
Facebook, YouTube.
You can like, comment, and subscribe.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks for sitting in. I'm Jared. That's Carrie, and we'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves once again at the end. I hope you've enjoyed our time together. I know I have. Fear not, Scope faithful. Days shall pass as if they were but a moment, and Jared, Adam, and Shane will return with another thrilling episode. Until then, send your comments to comments@thescopeshow.com or leave a voicemail message by dialing
612-21-SCOPE. That's 612-217-2673.
Thanks for listening, faithful fans. This is Tony Partington saying arrivederci. Tune in next time to another terrific edition of The Scope.